Ready? Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. We'll go ahead and call to order the April 17th Park Trails and Lakes Commission Workshop meeting. The first on the agenda is an open forum. Do we have anybody that wants to speak as part of the open forum?
I think they're here for the regular agenda item, so no one
Okay.
during the open forum.
Perfect. So we'll move on then to the snowmobile friendly community.
All right, so I'll just do a quick introduction. This evening we have a snowmobile club here in Forest Lake here to give you a presentation this evening. It's an introductory presentation on their club and some of their goals and objectives for becoming a snowmobile friendly community and a potential opportunity to work with the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission on achieving some of these goals. I think they'll go through and highlight some of the benefits and the recreational activity that it provides in the winter months here, which have been long and are important to consider as well. So you have their presentation up on your monitors so you can follow along as David Murphy here with Snowmobile Club. You can go ahead and give your presentation.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is David Murphy. I have lived in Forest Lake for about 15 years. I am married with 2 children who attend the Forest Lake area schools and we're actively involved in the community. I'm also a member of the Forest Lake Area Snowmobile Club, which has existed for over 50 years and is one of the oldest and active clubs in the state of Minnesota. I'm also acting secretary of the club and a former president and vice president. I'm also a region director for the Minnesota United Snowmobilers Association. One of my responsibilities as a director is to actively promote one of Minnesota's favorite pastimes, which is snowmobiling. Also tonight with me, I've got some other members of the club. I've got Don Halverson, Ray Valenga, and Adam. If I pronounce your name incorrectly, please correct me. Is it Grabovi? Grabovi from our club. We are here tonight as a suggestion by council members Mara and Ed, who have recently attended a few of our club meetings, and at the request of Jamie to talk about snowmobiling, how snowmobiling can help Forest Lake become a winter tourist destination, and present the American Council of Snowmobile Association Snowmobile Friendly Community Program. Our goal tonight is to propose some simple improvements to make the city of Forest Lake an easy to access, safe, and snowmobile friendly community, which will ultimately lead to making Forest Lake a snowmobiler's destination. We look forward to working with the city going forward. I've got about 10 slides to go through. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly to get to the discussion points, if that's okay. I know I think I gave you about 25 slides. Don't worry, we're not going to go through all of those tonight. In advance of tonight's meeting, the Forest Lake Club has met with some of the local clubs and trail associations and have some low or no cost proposals that will attract snowmobilers to the area, increase business revenue, and make Forest Lake a more attractive snowmobiling tourist destination. About the Forest Lake Club. The Forest Lake Club has been in existence for about 50 years. It's a Minnesota United Snowmobilers Associated sponsored club. They're primarily a social riding club. Many of our members belong to other snowmobiling organizations that do work, like maintain trails, host hay days, things of that nature. Our club organizes trail riding trips to members around the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin. Our current membership levels are about 25 to 30 families. We also provide charitable contributions to veterans rides, food shelf donations. We promote riding safety, we provide support to the Star Trail Association. We field inquiries about riding in the area through our social media channels and maps, etc. We are part of the Washington County Star Trail Association. I'm going to slide number 4 now. Snowmobiling generates about $22 billion annually across the United States, while also generating millions of dollars of tax revenues for state and local governments. Minnesota Snowmobile Trail Systems is a backbone of the winter tourism in the state with approximately 22,000 miles of maintained trails. Of those 22,000, 21,000 are maintained by volunteer clubs and organizations, and approximately 1,000 miles are maintained by the state DNR or National Park Service. The funding sources, there's about $14.6 million appropriated annually from the dedicated snowmobile account to the grant and aid trail budget for the development, maintenance, and operation of the state snowmobile system. Of that $14.6 million, $8.5 million goes to local clubs to build and maintain the 7% of the trails in the state, while $6.2 million is dedicated to the DNR for enforcement of the state trails and management of the account. Tourism research in Minnesota provided a conservative estimate that $200 million is generated annually by snowmobiling tourism in the state of Minnesota. This supports 8,000 jobs with wages and salaries of $245 million and producing $529 million in gross state product. So in total, if you add these up, it provides about $1 billion annually in gross receipt sales. Studies also show that the total expenditures for a snowmobile trip of 30 miles or less is over $42 per rider, just to give you an idea of how, there's the old saying that snowmobilers don't pack a lunch, we pack our wallets. So, local trail access. Forest Lake has the Hardwood Creek Trail is essential to the region of snowmobile trails, serving as a major trail interchange on a network that stretches as far north as Duluth, east to Siren, Wisconsin. The Forest Lake Area Trail has the Hardwood Creek Trail, which runs along Highway 61. That connects to 160 miles of groomed trails in Washington County. It connects to 540 miles of groomed trails in Anoka, Washington, Ramsey, and Dakota counties. And there are two trail associations that maintain the trails locally in the immediate area. One, which is the Washington County Star Trail Association, which is a Forest Lake Club belongs to, and the Rice Creek Trail Association, which grooms and maintains the area, the Rice Creek area over in Lena Lakes. Looking at slide 6 real quick. I know this is it's hard to read some of this, but this is an excerpt from the Minnesota United Snowmobilers Association, which shows that as of 2016, the Anoka, Dakota, Ramsey, and Washington County had almost 32,000 registered sleds, all having access to this trail system. Moving on to slide 7, talking about how the snowmobile clubs and organizations maintain the trails. Forest Lake is a social riding club. In the past has assisted in designing sections of the Hardwood Creek Trail. North Branch area has 3 main clubs: the North Branch Snowdrifters, Rush City Snowbugs, and Wild River Snowmobile Club. And I believe these clubs are all grooming clubs and maintain trails. The Rice Creek Trail Association consists of multiple clubs servicing Ham Lake, sections of Forest Lake, Circle Pines, Lino Lakes, Centerville, Hugo, Scandia, Columbus, Rice Creek, and has 2 groomers and a small truck groomer. And then Washington County Trail Association. This is the association responsible for much of the grooming of the Hardwood Creek Trail, and it's comprised of the following clubs: Bayport Pathfinders, Chemelite from 3M, Cottage Grove Clubs, Woodbury, Forest Lake, Hugo, and the Stillwater Snow Lords. MinUSA is a statewide organization designed to support local clubs with more, we'll have more than that to come. The ASCA, the ACSA, is the American Council of Snowmobile Associations. They're out of Lansing, Michigan, who work at the federal level. Example, working with the U.S. Department of Transportation, the National Forest Service, the National Park Services, to promote snowmobiling from a tourism perspective. Slide 8. MinUSA, which stands for the Minnesota United Snowmobilers Association, is a state-level snowmobile association comprised of approximately 200 local private clubs, mostly of volunteers, providing over 21,000 miles of maintained trails throughout the state. It's comprised of 9 geographical regions. Region 6 consists of Anoka, Washington, Dakota, and Ramsey County, and has approximately 543 miles of maintained trails. MinUSA is heavily involved in lobbying the state, ensuring the grant and aid funds to maintain the trail remains healthy and is administered appropriately. MinUSA is also involved on the federal level to ensure federal resources remain available and help promote the pastime at a federal level. Now, they're also big on promoting safety, and they offer scholarships for children and many other community benefits. Next, on slide 9, the American Council of Snowmobile Association has a program called the Snowmobile Friendly Community. It's to help state snowmobile associations recognize communities and businesses that cater to the needs of snowmobilers. Communities and businesses designated as snowmobile friendly can benefit from enhanced tourism promotion opportunities. In turn, snowmobilers benefit from improved safety and access to services, along with easy recognition of community and businesses that will cater to their trip needs. Recently, 2 of our neighboring communities, Ramsey and Anoka, have worked to achieve the snowmobile-friendly community status by the American Council, so the ACSA. And I initially had an excerpt from them, but I see it didn't make it in my slide deck. Going to slide 10. I did a SWOT analysis, thinking I'd have like 2 hours to give you guys a presentation, but I pulled many of these slides out, but I did put a slide in here about the strengths that we have in our area. So this really is looking at the business mixes that can cater to and from the benefit from snowmobiling just in our area alone. So you can see a list of the restaurants alone, and the ones that are asterisked are within walking distance or accessible from the Hardwood Creek Trail. And there's also we have some places for opportunities for sleds to get fuel. 3 of those are offering the non-oxy fuel offering, which most sleds require or should have. Some local lodging, the American, Country Inn and Suites would be ideal. The banks love snowmobilers because a lot of us take out loans to buy sleds. I think the average new sled rents right around $10,000 or $11,000 now. Other businesses that would benefit from snowmobile tourism would be the EcoFun Motorsports, who I believe sells some snowmobiles, some off-brand snowmobiles. Northern Tool, I mean, us sledders are always going through bearings and bogey bearings and belts, whatever have you. Walmart, we obviously need oil and things of that nature for the machines. And local auto parts stores would benefit for sure. There's 2 snowmobile dealers in the area that make it, that's an attractive to a snowmobiler because they need to have some repairs done or need parts that are custom parts. Stacy has a Polaris dealer in Columbus. The Waldock dealership is, I believe, a Yamaha, but they also service all kinds of sleds there as well. So here's our slide 11. I'm going to go through a proposal and then real quickly jump into one more slide, slide 14. But the proposal that we have as a club is a 4-part proposal. One is to partner with the city of Forest Lake to increase snowmobile tourism, revenue to businesses, and to evaluate, if decided, to pursue, such as create a long-term plan and a roadmap to get the ASCA snowmobile friendly designation. If the city chooses, we'd be happy to work with you on that. The city of Forest Lake to work with local clubs and MinUSA to make the city more accessible and safer for snowmobile traffic. So two things that we'd like to work with the city on this year if possible. One is to the local club to provide signage on Forest Lake 1 with designated access points into Forest Lake. The way it's been for years and continues to be is snowmobiles come through off of 2nd Avenue and cross where the old police station used to be. And then also there's a crossing on 4th Avenue. We'd like to partner with the city to determine if there's a way to route traffic to get from the lake to the Hardwood Creek Trail. There is no official point right now, and so when I field calls, and I think I've fielded about 4 calls this year, where people ask, how do I get from Lake 3 to Hardwood Creek Trail? The official answer is go down south on Manning to Highway 4, go west on Highway 4, and catch the Hardwood Creek Trail there. It's a 15-mile trip to come across the lake, because we don't have official access to the city of Forest Lake from Lake 1, 2, or 3. That's the first point. The second point is to work with Washington County and Forest Lake to add service signage on the Hardwood Creek Trail for business access, and hopefully we can work on some sled parking where sleds can park and experience restaurants and other amenities in Forest Lake. The next proposed item is to modify city snowmobile ordinances and policies to align with neighboring cities that permit snowmobilers to ride on residential streets to the designated trails. I do have a copy of Wyoming and Hugo's ordinances. If we would like to look at those at some point in time, we have copies of those, and they've modified theirs to make it more snowmobile friendly. And there's currently some confusing city ordinance language that suggests that it's illegal to own and operate a snowmobile in the city of Forest Lake. And we've already addressed it with the city attorney, and I've talked with Mara and Ed about it, and we'd love to work with us to help modify that. So if we're going to modify that, here's an opportunity perhaps to maybe modify ordinances to be in alignment with our neighboring cities as well. If you go up to, can you scoot to slide 14, Jamie, thank you. This is the last slide, and then we can open it up for discussion. This slide talks about the benefits when designated snowmobile friendly. New opportunities to market their FSC status on the American Council of Snowmobile Associations website and MinUSA's website and the local snowmobile club's website. And we do have one. The enhanced opportunities to tap into a local snowmobile club and MinUSA's associations and networks for snowmobile tourism, marketing and communication and promotion, heightened awareness to snowmobilers that the community is worthy of snowmobiling destination that is accommodating to their needs, more businesses and local tax revenues generated within the community from increased snowmobile tourism, heightened awareness to snowmobilers that the community's snowmobile-friendly policies make it safer snowmobiling destination, improve safety margins for snowmobilers and the community motorist, enhance winter recreation opportunities for the community residents and visitors, and enhance partnerships with the community's local snowmobile club for emergency response efforts. So those are some benefits that this designation can offer. And with that, to open it up for discussion?
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment and then commission discussion. So with this information, I have had a few conversations with the Snowmobile Club regarding the proposal you saw today. And I think Mara directed to Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, obviously, because of the recreational activities. And I think the big picture here is, a lot of the changes to city code or the language that's obviously going to go to city council for approval. But I think just using the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission to support this initiative for the recreation tourism perspective. So just keep that in mind. Some of the things here might not all be Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission oriented, but I think it's the big picture of working with us to help facilitate this, their goals and objectives here in the community. And my last comment is, I know that Washington County Parks used to groom our cross-country skiing trails at Castlewood, and they no longer do that as of the last couple of years. So I know I've reached out to City of Hugo, and their local snowmobile club partners with the city to do that for City of Hugo. So I think there are some other partnership opportunities of working together. So that's just the conversation. I thought tonight was a good opportunity during a workshop. We have some other workshop items we do need to get to tonight. So open to discussion, but maybe just a few minutes, and this will certainly come back to us here in the near future, but just wanted to get the introduction out. See what your initial comments, thoughts were on a potential partnership and how, if we want to move forward in supporting and working together.
So what does safe access from Lake One to Hardwood Creek Trail look like? What would that be? What would that mean to other citizens, the traffic patterns and things?
Well, currently a lot of snow. We were out 2 weeks ago, and we were walking, and that is the way that snowmobilers come off the lake. It's just not the official route. They come off. Sure. Right now, they come off the lake onto 2nd Avenue. There's I believe a barricade at the end of the street, and They simply go around that and they ride the boulevard along Second Avenue, and then they cross Second Avenue. That's what they've been doing. It's been that way. I think our two gentlemen here have been riding snowmobiles for, 100 years? Combined could tell us that that's the way it's been for many years here in Forest Lake.
But they have to get across Lake Street, Highway 61?
Yeah, and they cross 61. Currently, there's no official crossing across 61.
What does an official crossing look like?
Something that's signed, that would have a sign saying snowmobile trail. So when we create trails, we actually put signage up, and I don't have a picture of the signage tonight with me, but we have lots of signs of different types for safety, for direction, and for service signs that we can put up. I believe our organizations can provide those signs. It's the signage. The post may be something we have to partner with, but it's part of the MinUSA, the ASCA, and local clubs. We have access to get money for those signs and actually have them created.
What do the other city ordinances look like that permit traffic on the streets?
I have hard copies. If you'd like, I can hand those to you of Wyoming, and basically they allow snowmobilers to ride to and from the snowmobile trails on public roads along the shoulder or in the ditch, to and from the trails. It does not allow them to ride around the city, but it allows them to ride from their homes to the trails. That's a general statement. The Wyoming ordinances are quite lengthy. The ones in Hugo are more condensed, but in essence, that's what it is.
What is the actual, if you're going on Hardwood Creek Trail and you're coming through into the city, just north of here, is there a specific speed that you can go? Would there be signage up for speed?
There is currently signage up for speed, and I think they changed it last year. Do you remember what it is, Don?
Went from 30 miles an hour to 35.
Okay.
And that was with the approval of the Forest Lake City Council.
Okay.
That's what they wanted.
Okay.
We were in agreement to 30, keep it at 30 miles an hour.
Okay.
That's been raised,
Okay.
not by us.
I think there might be value in exploring it, but I think what would add some value would be to take a look at where pieces of this fall, because as you mentioned, Jamie, some of this wouldn't fall under parks, lakes, and trails, some of the ordinance pieces, for example. And then maybe looking at the strategic plan, and, we've got the piece in there about the trails. So maybe it would be kind of a future opportunity, once we identify all that we want to accomplish within there, figure out what specifically falls under parks, lakes, and trails, and take a look at it again down the road. Might be an option.
Yeah, I think one of the points was in a conversation with David was maybe more Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission oriented to help focus on designated trail routes and access points. That might be something with the Hardwood Creek Trail, and where in town could we identify safe routes, meaning there's sidewalk access or whatnot. So I think there's identifying what we can have the means to help with and supporting this initiative. And I think we can utilize and maybe talk to Blaine a little bit more about how to bridge the gap between Parks Commission and City Council, if there's, to get to some of this to the council level. So I think identifying what that might look like and having that further conversation. I know, again, I pulled up our current city code on the use and operation of snowmobiles. So I think what would make sense is if we had proposed new language, that we review it and provide a recommendation to city council that we support the proposed language change. I think that might be an appropriate step as it's promoting recreational use of the trails, and we would be in support of that initiative. So I think looking at the city code and the potential changes would start with Parks Commission, and then get that to city council for approval if that's something that we wanted to look at there. But I think certainly continuing the conversation, again at a later time with some of these objectives in mind and see how we can support the club. Any other questions or comments on it tonight?
If I could add one more thing, I'm sorry to
Sure.
interrupt. There is a Washington County Trails, Star Trail Association publishes a map of our area, of trails in our area, including the Hardwood Creek Trail. And they're interested, you know how you look at the old-fashioned maps and it shows a city and it blows up in the corners, it blows a city up and shows the inner city? They want to do the same thing with the snowmobile trails and feature Forest Lake on that with restaurants and other stops and access to and from the trail. They'd like to include that in their next year's Star Trail map. Currently, they don't have it. They have Hugo in Wyoming, but not Forest Lake.
Yeah, and I think with that, I think it sounds like we might need to pursue some form of joint workshop with the EDA, Economic Development group, if some of the focus is on attracting business downtown. So really just figuring out what our role is in this and supporting it, as it is a great recreational activity for use of trails in Forest Lake. And so I think continuing that conversation, I think next steps, and I think my question would be a little bit more for, and I can follow up with you, is just your timeline.
Sure.
You know, you say soon and in this feature next year, what are some deadlines we would be looking at and what's our timeline? So you can certainly, we can go through email on that or
Okay,
have a
yeah.
future conversation on the timing for that to see and then bring it back to another meeting
Okay.
on what might
So
be.
we'll communicate via email.
Yeah, or give me a call. We can talk about the
Sure.
timeline of things, so.
I would
Very good.
also be interested in your thoughts on what you were thinking for parking areas. Were you looking at those? So when you communicate with Jamie, if you could include that as well, thoughts that you may
Yep.
have in that
We
area.
do have some thoughts. We actually prepared some videos with, and pictures with proposed spots. So we're teed up and ready to go on that discussion when you're ready for it.
Perfect.
Thank you very
Perfect.
much.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
your
your
time
time.
today.
Appreciate your
Thank you very
presentation.
much
Thank
for
you.
your
Thank you,
time.
thank you.
Thank you. So next on the agenda, we have the dog park discussion.
All right, so Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, we are talking about dog parks again this evening. I know this has been a conversation over the past several of years, and I know end of last year, December, we had a Girl Scout troop present, and we're interested in doing a project for their Silver Award. Just most recently, we've had some interest in the community through the My Neighborhood app about the dog park again. So I'd like to have a discussion tonight on, just to get some clarification, is this something that we're interested in pursuing at the moment? If so, is there a location that would be suited, that would be a city park? This group on the My Neighborhood app proposed more of a volunteer-led and maintained approach, which I asked, what does that mean? How does that work? What is the sustainability? I don't have any information or answers on that tonight, but just looking for some feedback. I'll pull up the map here in a minute of one idea, if this is something we wanted to even consider, but just an open discussion on pros, cons. How do you feel about a dog park? It is something that continues to be brought forward to the city, and just wanted to revisit that again, given the interest that was spurred on the app. And I know, Terry, you've been following that a little bit and have an understanding. So if you want to share some of the information or feedback on the number of votes and the percentages, if you have any of that you can recall. So again, it's a discussion. I guess what I'd like to see from this is, do we have any interest in this or not? If so, we can talk about a potential opportunity in one of our city parks.
I'm not terribly interested in a dog park. I think we can best focus our efforts in some of these other park improvements.
Okay?
And I'm looking at the park recommendation behind the storage facility. There's an awful lot of wetland there, and considering that the dog fecal contains an awful lot of phosphorus, we're adding to the phosphorus loads of the wetland. And I know that there's all good intention of picking up after your dog, but I've not been to a dog park where people are consistent about that. That's my opinion.
Any other initial thoughts or comments regarding this?
Was this planned to be a fenced dog park with disposal opportunities on site?
So we haven't gotten too far into specifics. The map you have with the yellow parcel, Southview Park highlighted, I think in previous workshops or discussions, we've discussed that as a potential opportunity. If you look at all of our city parks, what ones would even be an option? And I think this would be one of the only options that I'm aware of. I know there's been talk about through the woods in forest by Fenway Park. I know that currently our city code allows off-leash dogs at Bixby Park, and there was some elaborate plan for development of a dog park there. But this was just one consideration. The thought that I had would be a smaller fenced-in area near where we had the playground equipment. And then the rest of the park is woodsy, and there's some natural trails that we mow through the park, that those could be for people to walk through with their dogs. I don't think anything would be allowed as an off-leash unless we had to change city code for that. But the thought would be to have a smaller fenced-in area, but then walk back in the path where it's more nature and scenic.
So if there was
And that's-
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. So if there was a fence back there, that would still be off or on leash then? Or could it be off leash as it was inside the?
In the fenced area, and these are details we could get into, but in the fenced area, they could be free to roam, and we could consider a small dog area, large dog area, and these are all details we haven't even talked about or considered. It's just, do we want to focus our time and efforts in a dog park at the moment? Is this a good location for it?
So I'll
Is
give
this one
you-
that we table again? And
I'll give you just the background. So it was posted on the Nextdoor app site. There were 258 people that voted on it. 77% of those people were in favor and 23% were not in favor. It looks like their vision was to have it similar to Otter Lake Dog Park, which would be a fenced-in dog park and volunteer maintained. But I have a lot of questions, as Jamie already mentioned on that, but I just wanted to provide you with the statistics and what was posted.
I had heard initially about the dog park idea on the Nextdoor app as well, and my initial thought was this exact parcel that you had chosen. It's near my neighborhood. I've been there. It could use some attention there. I know there's been family volunteered in the past. I think they put some bad houses up and some other things to wetland, try to control mosquitoes. One of the questions I have, I know there's some support for this, is this going to be a dog park that people are walking to enjoy? Is it something that they would drive to and get out with their dogs? I think the parcel is really one of the better options. The city already owns the property, already maintains it, but the details need to be hammered out as far as where the traffic would be coming from. If it's just foot traffic or parking, I would hate to see traffic coming into this residential area. If it brings a lot of traffic similar to what they have in White Bear Lake, it would be probably frowned upon by the neighbors. But if there was another access, some safe parking place that isn't, again, routed down it's a closed street, not a through street. It could be a good opportunity for us to utilize land better maintained that we already owned. So
I guess the bigger question, I think we could hammer through details later, but the bigger question is there even interest in a dog park? And if not, then we could table the remainder of the conversations.
But that's, when we do receive community input or feedback, I like to bring it to Parks Commission to address it. And I know this is one that we've had a few times. This one seemed a little more sizable, being that it reached a lot of people on the My Neighborhood app. So just wanted to revisit it one more time to see if it's something that we rethink of. I think that this parcel, the working theory I pulled up here, if you guys can see, was we took this equipment out. So we have this area that's mowed, which obviously this year may or may not need to be maintained to the specifications we've had if we don't really have any amenities back there. But the working theory was, could we consider a fenced-in area in some square footage of this maintained area? And I'll pull up a website here to show you, but then the rest is just a mowed path through there, which would, your dog's on your leash, but they could be walked through here. And then giving them the space to run would be in a fenced-in area. And that was just the one thought I had. An example, this is Chisago City, their dog park. It's a smaller fenced-in area. I don't have the square footage. I'll just go through a few pictures. They put dog stations up. It's kind of a similar environment. Kind of like, that looks familiar, like Southview. Some of these, and here's another picture. So I think it's a very simple dog park where they've put some fencing up, have some rules, some dog stations, and I don't know I didn't spend time going into the level of detail until we even decide if it's something that we want to pursue. So if there's interest, next steps could be talking to Chisago City. How is it maintained? What are some of their annual costs? Do they have any issues? Have they had any complaints or injuries or liability? Those are the next step questions if we even want to consider it. But to Blaine's point, I don't know of any other access points to Southview Park. So that obviously community input would if we would go down that road, a next step would be talking to residents in the area. This area here could serve as parking, but I think this would draw people to the neighborhood, and depending on the demand, there could be a lot of people going there. So it's hard to predict that. I'm not, myself, I don't know of any other way to have an access point, and if we did, then we're turning a low-cost dog park into probably a pretty big expense to develop any future or additional access points. I don't know. I don't think there's anything we can do to improve the access without a significant cost. So that's the discussion. Wanted to at least bring it back to Parks Commission, see if there was any other thoughts for consideration. I know we could look at potentially Cedar Park with the dragon. There's a big space of green space there. And then Jack, I know there's that trail that walks back to Bixby. We could put a small fenced-in area there, just a small fenced-in area, and then they could walk back and do off-leash at Bixby. We do have the playground there, but there's green space at Cedar Park as well. So I'm just throwing out any options that I think could be even considered.
Are there any dog barking ordinances in the city?
I am not aware of any dog barking ordinances in the city. So here's just an aerial view. Cedar Park, obviously, this is the parcel. It looks a little different now. Obviously, you have the playground and dragon here, but there's quite a bit of open space right kind of here where it says Cedar Park. So could you take that fenced-in concept? But then you do have a playground with a lot of kids around. We're putting in the pavilion's going to be right here. And then you have the basketball court. So, however, there is this trail that walks all the way back to Bixby Park, which is our only off-leash dog area, official approved area for off-leash dogs. So any other comments or questions on?
Wait, you say that that's an area that's officially designated for off-leash for dogs?
Yes, but it's not a dog park. It's just Bixby Park is the only per city code where you can have your dogs off their leash.
And if that was publicized, would that negate the necessity for a dog park?
It could probably help alleviate it, but I think what people are truly looking for is an official dog park where dogs can have a nice little area to socialize with other dogs and people and have a designated space, similar to what I showed for Chisago City. I think that's what people are thinking when they think dog park, not just a big unmaintained, non-maintained open space with shrubs. So this is, I think, the request. So Chisago City, I mean, maybe next steps are just even talking to them. They do have a little playground near their dog park, it looks like. See if they've had any issues. But those are really the only options that I could come up with as considerations if we're even interested in pursuing that at this time.
What if we just got the information from the neighboring communities, just for an idea?
Maybe that's something I can have the volunteer group seek out some information and bring it back to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission?
Because the app, if they do it through the app, they can target specific neighborhoods as well. So maybe they could look at the neighborhood of where these parks are and target the survey to hit those neighbors. Might be an option.
So I think that's a good idea. Do you think the big if, like, do you think of any other parks that would be considered for dog park, or do you feel like these one or two are the potential only options that would seem suitable?
I guess the only one that I possibly see suitable is over Cedar and Bixby in that open area. Because we took the equipment out of
Southview.
Southview last year because it's kind of landlocked and you can't get back there. And I think there was some other talk about trying to preserve that area back there.
Or a land swap with Rice Creek Watershed, because we have a big project in Fenway Park to improve that property we traded for with Pratt to make it more functional.
Yeah.
There was some discussion about
Mhm,
that,
yep.
as I recall. Because the property up at Fenway, it has the wetland that splits it in half.
Mhm.
And that, you gotta mitigate that somehow to make it functional.
Yeah.
I guess I hate to put people through work if we don't have an interest. If we have an interest and we're serious about that, then I think we take that next step and have them, ask them to do that. But like I said, I hate to put people through work if we don't have an interest.
Do you want to table it while we get through some of these other items and continue the discussion for next year consideration or a later time?
I'm just gonna throw it out there. If you have an opinion now, why don't we decide whether or not we want it now instead of continuously coming back to it? I don't know.
Well, I think that's a good, I mean, I think that is a good direction to take. If we can come to that today, that'd be helpful. I know that the Girl Scout troop needs a project, and if this isn't gonna be a viable option for them, they need to move forward with something else. Their deadline was 2019, so I know we still have some time. But if you feel comfortable, I mean, this is a workshop, where nothing formally approved, but just if you guys have a strong opinion and there's just one way or the other.
I have a dog. I've been to dog parks. I have yet to see a dog park that I will let my dog go into because I think they're rather disgusting. And I don't think people clean up after their dogs. But I choose not to go there. Again, I don't have much interest in this. I'd rather see our energies focused on some other projects.
I think the dollar amount for the other things that we'd like to do this year, and for what this would cost, I mean, trying to listen to the people from the neighborhoods app and people that are talking about it, but there's a huge dollar amount that has to go into this, and I don't know if we're ready for that yet.
I think that there's obviously a cost to it, initial startup cost. I don't think that would necessarily doesn't have to be a hugely significant cost. I mean, fencing is affordable, and then some dog stations and benches, but there is that cost. And then the bigger cost or question is the maintenance and the long-term maintenance. And how does it get maintained, or how do we ensure it's maintained long-term? I think that's the big question and concern for a dog park, is the long-term maintenance.
I don't have a dog, and I've never been to a dog park. But, you have parking issues, you have neighborhood issues, you have odor issues, I would assume. I don't know if I would I know I wouldn't like a dog park near me, so.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I know with Cedar Park, it would be more prominent in the neighborhood. It will impact either one of the neighborhoods. There are residential units there. I don't think there's a dog barking ordinance that I'm aware of. I think that we have some dangerous dog ordinance, but I think that there would be that impact on the neighboring residents. And at this time, I don't know of any other potential opportunities of parks that don't have residential areas nearby that would be a feasible option for city-owned parkland. So I think it sounds like maybe we've considered the options and don't see a viable option. And unless someone came forward with a very detailed plan and proposal with costs outlined to present, I think at this point in time, it sounds like we'd want to just keep our efforts focused on some of the other pending projects.
Very well said.
Okay. Perfect. We'll move forward then. Thank you for your time in addressing that.
It does, doesn't it? All right, next on the agenda, we have Lakeside Memorial Park equipment.
All right, so this evening we are just gonna have a kind of a discussion and a next steps focus on how to move forward with our Lakeside Memorial Park equipment project. Just a little background. The grant, City Council did not approve the resolution for the grant to the Minnesota DNR for the outdoor recreation program grant opportunity for the proposed recommendation of the inclusive playground at Lakeside Memorial Park. So we are looking at next steps on how to move forward. I think just to kind of close the loop on that, I feel that there was just still some questions about location. And to submit the grant, you had to be very location specific and project specific. So we would be applying for Lakeside Memorial Park for the project that we had proposed, the barrier-free playground. And I think there were still some questions from City Council. There were some opportunities to still not accept funding, should we have been awarded the grant, but I just think that there were still some reservations. So with that said, we did not apply for the grant. However, this grant is an annual program, and the application does become available again in December of 2018, and will be due again March 30th of 2019. So it is an annual program. I think for tonight, discussion is what is our focus and how do we move forward. I think there's a couple of things I wanted to discuss briefly tonight. One, I think one of the recurring questions is this going to continue if we put new equipment there, is it going to shift again? And I think the only real way we're going to know that is if we do some soil testing and soil investigations so they know what they're working with below the surface and that they have an understanding of what weight restrictions would be allowed for equipment there with the proximity to the lake. So that's one thing tonight. I did find out to do that at the Lakeside Memorial Park would be about $4,000 to do the testing. And I think that would just be one step to really have assurance on what we're working with, whether we put in a barrier-free playground for $250,000 or we put in a new playground for $100,000. I feel like that might be an appropriate next step. So that's one of the workshop discussion items tonight on how you feel about that expense and next step. And then also wanted to talk about having the park, a safety inspection done by a professional, experienced, certified park safety inspector. I don't know if that's something I'd like to pursue that while we continue to move forward in next steps.
To inspect the existing? Okay.
To make sure that because of the shifting in the equipment that there aren't any safety hazards. And so I included in your, just in the workshop items to work with tonight. Maybe let's just start with that really briefly. There's a company called Playground Guardian. They're out of Charlotte, North Carolina, but they work closely with one of our local distributors of playground equipment. So this is the company, Playground Guardian. They come out and do playground inspections. They offer this is an example of a report you would get. So basically it gives us the information on what we have in inventory and just make sure that everything's safe and compliant. If there is an issue, they'll let you know, and then Public Works or somebody can go out and fix it and address the situation. We don't have anything of recent where the playground was inspected, so it may be an appropriate next step if until we figure out what new equipment or how we're gonna move forward with the equipment at the park. So that's a big discussion tonight. Do you wanna, how do we move forward? Is this still the plan to revisit the inclusive playground proposal and go through with city council some of the questions or concerns? Have an opportunity to explain the rationale behind that recommendation, and go from there. Because there's going to certainly be some lag time between if we would pursue that route and apply for the grant next year. That's several months away, and then we could be looking at like 2 years until that new equipment is in.
Was that proposal specifically turned down because of the soil that's underneath the current footings?
It was not turned down because of the soil. I think that was one of the concerns, is that putting expensive equipment there, it's gonna shift. How do we know for sure it will shift again or not?
So that was one of the concerns at the workshop before council, before we brought it back. And then we talked about it at our meeting, and that's, where I came from the standpoint of, I wouldn't sell you my house and guarantee you 100% that there isn't gonna be any heaving when I look at my driveway right now. But that argument didn't come to fruition, so I think that this at least gives us an opportunity to overcome a major objection, or one of the major objections, which is, how are we gonna guarantee? I still don't think this is gonna 100% guarantee that it's not gonna shift, but maybe it will help us make more educated decisions about how deep or what or how, I don't know.
Is that the council's only issue with that site? It seemed to me that it was more,
I
they
think,
didn't like the site
I
in
think it is
general.
one of their issues, and I do want to go on record, and I want to say that I am extremely disappointed in the council members that had questions, came forward and met with us. We had a unanimous decision as a board that this is what we wanted to pursue. We were thoughtful and purposeful in listening to the feedback from the council's workshop and making sure that that was incorporated into the plan that we brought forward. The plan that was brought forward then, it was a little bit like nailing Jell-O to the wall. The objections changed once it came forward again, which to me is disappointing, because we really did, as a team, put thought and effort into listening to what those objections were and overcoming them as best as we could. We did the additional research to make sure that if we pursued that grant, that we had a get out of jail free clause that would still allow the council to make a decision. So I think if we're gonna try to make decisions tonight based on what council wants, it's gonna be really difficult, because that game seems to change a little bit over time. So I think some of these things, this would overcome one objection. The other objection was that we didn't have a playground that would go for ages 10 to 13, I believe. So we made sure our plan covered ages 2 to 12. And then the objection at the council meeting was we didn't have something for 2 to 5s. Well, if they had done their homework, they would have, and read the material, they would have seen that our proposal did cover from 2 to 12. We were missing 1 year, which was the teen, which we addressed in our meeting as part of the teen park. So frankly, I'm disappointed, and I think I'm very disappointed because this group put a lot of time and effort into it and really worked towards overcoming the objections, and it was completely disregarded. So I just.
Well said.
Yes, well said.
I support you 100% on that. It was disingenuous, this whole process.
Yes, it was. Along with the cost too. The cost would have been
Negligible.
less
Yeah.
than half.
Yes,
It was free money that would have been into this community, which would have also supported with this inclusive playground, would have brought in local business or people coming in to play on the playground. It would have brought families over to different restaurants. All in all, it would have been a win-win situation.
I think doing this assessment gives us something official to tell us where that park is really at and what the concerns are, because I'm not 100% sure that we can make a difference right now in that park. So this at least tells us, safety-wise, do we have a real issue here? And if so, how quickly do we need to pursue it before we can look at other alternatives?
Jamie, does the commission have the authority to spend $4,000?
We would have the authority to do that as long as we can fund that through our already approved maintenance and improvements operating budget, which we have $46,000 annually. And so I think we would have the funding available to make the determination. And I think it would be a supported one in the fact that it's really, I think, the only way we're gonna have some assurance of how to move forward before we put any new equipment there. And this is, I had spoke with our city engineer, and then he provided me with a local contact that lives in Forest Lake, so he's happy to work with us. Again, this is subsoil, subsurface material grades, things that are not in my wheelhouse, so it's hard for me to speak of it. I feel comfortable with knowing that we would get some results in an actual report with lab results, identifying what our subsurface layers are and how, and from there the engineers can just tell us what we need to do to make sure we have a good structure and base to support a playground equipment. They should be able to tell you too the weight bearing load of how much equipment can be held there. So I think it's really one of the only factual ways of how we would know anything of how to move forward. And when this equipment was put in 2003, I don't think they did it. There's no records of any soil testing. I think they just did a direct bury and poured some concrete around the footings and called it good. And now we're where we're at. So,
4,000 is a small investment if you compare that to the investment that we're looking at making there and making sure we get our return on investment.
I think if you don't, you can make some educated guesses and do things a little differently than they've been done, knowing that now there's some risk in that, meaning like 10, 12 years later, you could experience some shift, maybe sooner. It's been 10, 12 years since we've noticed the shifting in the equipment. So that's the risk. This could happen again. And nothing's guaranteed, but at least this gives us an idea of what we're working with and would have the best recommendations on what depth we need to go to with the concrete to pour the footings and make sure we have a little more security or assurance around what we're doing for the equipment we're proposing. So that is one recommendation of something we could do now, regardless of what we put there. And I appreciate the comments, and I know that we've put a lot of work and consideration into this idea and proposal. So I'm happy to continue that conversation and figuring out how we work with council to continue that discussion on the inclusive playground. I've been doing some more research. It's really, an inclusive playground is actually a very desirable amenity in the community. I know there's a couple that are being talked about in other communities, and people are just willingly giving money and grant funding and other donations because of to support that project specifically. So I found a couple other grant opportunities as well. I know that the location was considered, but the reason, Lakeside obviously is the premier park in downtown Forest Lake, and there, Fenway was talked about a lot, but there's no need for playground equipment there, so it would be creating a project where we wouldn't necessarily need one. The equipment there is suitable, and really there's already a lack of green space and more demands for fields. So Fenway Park, I don't know that would be, we didn't consider that given those facts. We're really looking to replace the equipment at Lakeside Memorial Park. So I think that we still could continue the conversations. It just would delay the installation of new equipment like I said, it could be 2 years from now before we would have that there if we would wait to do the grant opportunity again.
So there was an argument against having an all-inclusive park at Lakeside Park?
Correct. There was,
But wait, no, there was an argument against having all-inclusive at our preeminent park?
concern about the location
Okay.
for the inclusive playground there.
That's almost
And so-
disgusting.
So the alternative solution that was brought to the table at the council meeting was to put it in Fenway so that kids could play with their siblings were playing sports. And we as a council discussed Fenway and the reasons why we didn't want it at Fenway. So that was the alternative that was thrown out at that meeting. So I think
Okay.
that's where we're either gonna need to come together as the two groups and talk about it, or
So I
we
think
just
that's
move
the,
forward with some of this stuff before we come back together.
so I think the decisions are twofold. Is this something we strongly want to continue to move forward with? And I know we did have a little lag time without a liaison from Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission. So we're fortunate to have Blaine on board, and they serve as the essentially communicator between Parks, Trails and Lakes and City Council. I had spoken with Councilmember Freer about our proposed project, and he was very supportive of the inclusive playground at Lakeside Memorial Park. I don't know if some of it was an unfortunate timing where the message was not delayed or there was not that opportunity given his resignation, but I think, if we can have some continued discussions with Blaine and how we can potentially work with City Council, I think we continue to keep this idea on the table and move forward with it for Lakeside Memorial Park if we can work through some of those concerns.
In Blaine's interest, there's already the park equipment there. The new park, as proposed, would have the same footprint, so it's not encroaching upon any other aspects of the park. It's just improving what's already there and making it a much greater amenity for the community.
Yeah, I think that's good feedback for Blaine because I know he'll need to kind of get up to speed on the project a little bit from what he may or may not know or have followed in the process, but.
I did watch that meeting, wasn't on board at that point, and there was definite interest from everybody on the council to pursue that grant. Where I saw the disagreement was on location and the need for where to put it. And then I think that the terminology of an all-inclusive park wasn't fully understood. The handicap accessible is definitely the focused aspect, but the other arguments that I heard was they were looking for something that appeals to some of the teenager group because you have the festivities that go on in the park, something to keep the kids, middle school age children, something to do was also a thought, but I think that's separate from, I guess, the bin area for the playground.
Yeah, those objections that they had were addressed by us. The equipment ranged from, they wanted up to age 13, the equipment ranged up to age 12, and then our solution for the teen was the Belts Park. So we had made a motion to pursue Belts Park as that alternative.
So I think compromises should be made all around to try to get the project done. I don't think big compromises need to be done, some small ones. I still haven't seen the plans for the inclusive park. I spoke to Jamie, we're gonna meet a little later here, and I'm gonna try to get brought up to speed, but I have definite interest in trying to utilize a grant if we can get it. Applying's the first step. It's hands down a great benefit for everyone in the community. So I need to get brought up to speed here.
Mhm.
I definitely appreciate all you guys' hard work. I'm sorry to hear that it didn't go through like you guys had hoped, but I don't want you to lose hope yet that there's still time. Maybe not this time around. It's not going to go in the trash. It's something that still can be done. So if you guys have any input for me, anything to give me so I can share that with my other council members, I definitely want to know what you have for me.
I would like to see us pursue the soil test and the safety evaluation.
I think
That
that's,
will overcome two of the objectives that we have and give us some more substantial information.
I think the soil tests are a great idea regardless of what type of playground were to go in there. Just so you have an idea of the engineering demand. So do we need to over-engineer something so it can handle a 15, 25-year lifespan as opposed to something less? When you put that kind of money in, you would hate to see it get destroyed earlier. So inclusive or not, it definitely should undergo any kind of testing we can do to be more informed. So I think you guys would be right in pursuing that. And the overall cost of a playground, it's rather minor. It's kind of an insurance thing. So I don't see a downside to that from my perspective.
Should we expand the boundary of that study? Because the closer you get to the lake, the more shifting you're gonna have of soils, and maybe if it was only 6 feet further away, I'm just throwing that out. Is it possible even? I don't know.
Yeah, I will circle back with them. I don't know if they gave me like a square footage here of where exactly they're doing the soil testing.
Within
but-
the existing playground.
Oh, yeah, okay, here we go. Yeah, I can talk to them. I'm sure a lot of the costs are bringing in the equipment. The drilling services is, $1,500 of it, and then they're there, so I'm assuming it wouldn't be a significant additional cost to test in one other area. I know some of our smaller shade shelters that are along the lake shore as well the concrete's kind of shifted a little bit, so I'm mostly concerned about, like, people ask me, how do you know? And I'm like, I don't know until that's just not my area. And so to me, I know it's an expense, but it's the only way that I would be able to hand them something to say, here's what we know now, and this is what it tells us.
The other thing that I was just thinking about is, we have to the north of our Lakeside is their condos that are next there, and they're actually closer to the lake than kind of per se where we're at. And those were built long before that playground equipment went in. So there's got to be a way that they can utilize rebar and more cement to solidify that area.
There is other technologies come out, Goliath anchoring systems, just one that comes off the top of my head, utilizes drilled in rods. So there's other technology that's out there that doesn't involve just excavating soil corrections and other things of that nature. It is a possibility that there was improper compaction at the time that the last one was installed. There's a lot of variables on hand. Some of it's probably out of our control. It could be done on the contractor level if they did a correct installation, but anything else that we can prepare ourselves for, look at other opportunities is wise in my eyes.
Yeah, I think going back to continuing pursuing this, I think I feel comfortable with both soil testing and a playground inspection, just because the existing equipment's gonna be sitting there for a while, regardless. I mean, it's gonna take some time to get some of this moving forward, and then if we would decide to pursue the grant again, I mean, that's next March deadline, and I think there are other grant opportunities that we can certainly explore. However, I don't think we had a very strong application for that specific grant for improvements for safety and accessibility, and met all the requirements pretty strongly, good consideration. And the match, I think the awarded amount was up to $150,000. So it's a pretty sizable one, which we would need to help fund and support our project. So I think that's kind of the timeline we'd be working with, but what can we do now to get us there is, I think, our focus.
So along with, since that equipment's gonna be sitting there for a little while, could we do if they come in to do the testing on the soil, we'd still have to go through and try to raise the couplers to kind of straighten that stuff out?
Potentially, they're gonna see what they can do. The company who manufactures that specific piece of equipment at Lakeside Memorial Park, excuse me, Landscape Structures, they've been on site, we've been there a couple times, and they don't feel comfortable doing the adjustments, so that right now the city would be responsible for making any of those adjustments, working with our city engineer. So there's some information. I've been having conversations back and forth on that. So I think a safety inspection is important just to make sure in its current status. There could be no level 1 significant hazards, and we'd have a report to show that, and we'd be okay to leave it as is. Assuming not much, I mean, you're talking like very, very minimal shifting that could potentially occur. But additionally, we're up against, and I put this in the packet just to talk about, is just so you guys are aware, with some of the new tariff laws and requirements, there's going to be increased costs for playground equipment. So we are going to experience that next year when we do order. What I included in the packet was from Landscape Structures, who I do have some current quotes with. So it was just to kind of give you guys that awareness that we will experience some increased prices down the road.
If the Guardian company comes in, takes a look at our equipment and says, holy cow, you folks have a big liability here. And we go in and we do a lot of improvements on that specific component of the park, is that going to, well, it'll be a remedial fix. Will that decrease the likelihood that we want to move forward with the total facelift?
It could be a driving factor in our decision on how to move forward. If the safety report came back and there were significant, hazards or things that we weren't able to improve, that certainly could impact our decisions.
Or maybe we look at a phased approach to the inclusive park, rip that out and put something that's inclusive in there and build off of it. I mean, I think I'd like to see what the report says and then have us strategize.
I agree, but we should be prepared
Yeah, I agree.
for the worst.
So
agree.
to couple that, there can be I didn't go into detail on this, but we could look at a phased approach with the inclusive playground that was proposed. I don't know the breakdown of what phase 1 would look like and what that would entail, but we can have that conversation with Minnesota Wisconsin Playground to see what a phased approach would be.
So we also are aware of, I am also aware of a private group or citizen that would like to donate some money to the parks. That would be contingent upon us having some type of strategy for this. So I think looking at doing these things and then maybe continuing to work on a strategy for Lakeside so that it's a pretty sizable donation, I think, so that we would have something to be able to say, yes, we would like it, and here's what we could use it for would be nice. So if we continued to work on something here, it would be good, I think.
So go ahead, Doug.
Is it time for a motion?
We can't do motion in the
Yeah.
workshop, but I think to wrap up though, I wouldn't need approval to move forward with soil testing or inspection. That's all within our operating budget, so I don't need Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission approval on it. So it sounds like there is positive feedback for that and support to move that forward. With the inspection, the playground inspection for just Lakeside Memorial Park is, I believe, $750. I got 2 quotes. One was $750 and one was $900. The one, so Playground Guardian is $750. They travel to this area quite a bit. We wouldn't have as much flexibility in our schedule with that. It would be contingent on when they're in the area, so I can work on getting a date scheduled for that inspection. They do offer discounted rates. If we booked 5 park inspections together, they charge $500 per park, so $2,500. So I don't know if that's something we need to do. I'm more focused right now on, I think, just Lakeside Memorial Park, and moving forward with that. And then secondly, the other point I'm hearing from the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission is develop a strategic plan and work with Blaine on potentially how do we move forward with continuing our conversation on the inclusive playground for Lakeside Memorial Park and how we can make that happen. See what challenges and other questions there might be. Does that seem like a fair understanding? Everyone's on the same page with that? And I guess we'll know in the next month or two, once I can kind of get Blaine up to speed and get this back to, get some council feedback at least through Blaine, hopefully, on if there's any other challenges that we're not aware of, or how this is gonna, likelihood that this could be moving forward. Any other comments?
Good.
Okay.
So next is the Fenway Management Agreement. We've got,
So I think, in respect of time, I was hoping to be done by 8 o'clock. Just, I can have this as a quick update, and if I have any other questions, I can certainly reach out to Jack or Jason, who's also on the Fenway Advisory Committee. Just wanted to really briefly bring this up. We are putting forward amendments to take out the manager, which is FLA, their responsibility of irrigation. That will now be the city's responsibility. And aeration will now be the city's responsibility. Those are the two key changes to the amended agreement. We will have a Fenway Advisory Board meeting soon, once this gets done, so I think we can just kind of move forward. If you have any other major questions or concerns regarding the agreement, I know there's, this is maybe for discussion, but there are some deadlines in there that have come up and passed and that are coming up again soon, and we have an agreement, but what, the level of enforcement, so that's something I can certainly talk to Blaine a little bit more about as well, and our council representatives on the Fenway Advisory Board on how we move forward if we're not receiving what is needed or asked of per the agreement. So if anyone has any questions, I want to try to wrap up so you guys can get out of here, and I know it's kind of been a long night for a few of you, so.
so Jamie, I don't know if it's possible, but if we could maybe pull together a one-page document that has the due dates that are within that agreement, because I know there's a financial report that's due June 1st. There was something that was due in relation to amount owed on April 15th. I just kind of perused that document. Maybe if we could have a one-pager, since we're moving forward with reestablishing our relationship, if we had a one-page document that just had the due dates and what is due, that way everybody can be successful out of the gate. I don't know if that would be possible, and everybody would know these are the, instead of weeding through the document.
Jack,
Sorry.
I'm happy to do that. That's not a problem. I can certainly summarize that very quickly. I think, Jack, do you have any comments?
No,
Okay.
not at this time.
So if everyone on the commission's comfortable with that, I'll just reach out to Jack and Jason if there's any other amendments to the agreement. Once that's done, it will have to go to council for approval. So I'll just try to get that back by our May 15th meeting for approval to go to council. With the snow and weather, it's a delayed start to the season anyhow, and this doesn't really impact anything significant in that matter, so,
The delay is not with our new contractor.
no.
Okay.
The delay is with the snow we got,
That white stuff.
No.
that's
All that.
this
I
one.
thought it was, I
You've
thought about
noticed
the
it, haven't you?
paperwork and the timetables.
All right, so with that, we're, a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.